So for me, this has become a lifestyle. I started working in juvenile justice reform and transformation and criminal justice reform when I was about 19 years old. It was actually after the death of my sister, who was buried on my 17th birthday. She was killed in a one-vehicular car accident. And so prior to that, we had been navigating the system through my brother, who had been in and out. But when she actually passed away and we had to navigate the system as victims, it was very challenging. The system was really cold. And so I certainly felt it was my responsibility to learn more about how I could impact young girls like her to never feel lost, but also that I learned restorative justice from my father when he was asked if he wanted to prosecute the person responsible for her death. And he said, no, I can't take another mother's child away. So it's been kind of what has driven me every single day. And also knowing that at the time that I lost her, I also had 3 nieces and nephews that were looking at me for direction. And so I wanted to be that change. And I've always known that I was going to change the world. I just didn't know that I was going to start at 17, 18, 19. But I've dedicated 20 plus years working on providing alternatives to incarceration for young people, working inside prisons, using culture and spirituality as a tool for transformation, and also trying to build a national movement to end child incarceration under the Gathering for Justice, which is Harry Belafonte's organization, and as of recent, one of the national co-chairs of the Women's March on Washington. To march on January 21st for the Women's March, we were able to bring out over 5 million people around the world. And so we had about 400 sister marches. The March on Washington had about 1.2 million people there, and we also had sister marches across the globe. I always feel we, as people of color, we are cultured. We're cultured people, and it's important. That's a huge part of our identity. And oftentimes, when we enter the system, it strips us from our identity. And when you are stripped of your identity, you kind of lose yourself. And so it's important for us to infuse these systems with culture, providing positive alternatives to young people, but also immersing culture in everything that we do. And young people need it, especially if we're asking them to thrive in their communities. We need to provide something that's familiar to them. And so culture and spirituality for me are 2 key things that belong in any type of work that we do, whether it's system change, whether it's police accountability, whether it's system accountability, whether it's prison reform or juvenile justice reform. I feel it's really important to incorporate those, particularly because a lot of the people that are in these systems have never had their trauma actually dealt with. They have a lot of healing that needs to happen, and because we've been able to use healing, spirituality, and culture in our programming, young people are able to really thrive. They're able to find themselves in something that's bigger than themselves. And so the work that I've done with Barrios Unidos to the Gathering for Justice has always incorporated those different elements in it, and you actually can see once you give young people their identity back, it's a different person. These young people adapt really well to it, and they want to explore more of that. I think oftentimes when we have meetings as advocates, we have meetings with people who are like-minded. And it's important that we invite the judges, that we invite the policymakers, that we actually have one-on-ones with them. I know for us, when we were looking at reducing racial disparities in Santa Cruz County, it was really because the community had put fire underneath the system, and bringing in the judge to actually know that this was a problem, and using stories, letting the people that are the most impacted be a part of the conversation, using their story to actually change the hearts and minds of individuals. Like, you know, when we think about Khalif Browder, not many people knew about Khalif. Not many people knew that he was somebody who allegedly stole a backpack and then was in the system for 3 years, facing, you know, anywhere from physical to sexual abuse, and also ultimately taking his life. And so when I think about the importance of infusing these systems, or even having these conversations with elected officials, we have to change their hearts and minds. We have to make sure that they know that the decisions that they're making are negatively impacting our young people. And also we as individuals that are from community need to also sit at that table. We need to cultivate the leadership of youth to understand that their voices are powerful, that they also need to be sitting at the table where decisions are being made about their life. How do we actually create a pipeline of leadership from the young people in the most marginalized communities and those that are also victims? We need their voices in the space, but we can't have these isolated conversations with one another. We need to bring more people into the fold. And so it's some of the work that we try to do in New York as well, is having these conversations with electeds about the raise the age. Why is it important to raise the age of criminal responsibility? And have experts in the room as well as the people that have been impacted by that system in the room to actually tell the story of why it's important. Being an advocate for the past 20 years, I've seen that we have worked in various communities, and oftentimes we are speaking with one another. And I think the Positive Youth Justice Initiative is an opportunity to bring different stakeholders and different people to the table to talk about collaboration and create pathways for young people in the most marginalized communities to actually really thrive and to be at the center of the conversation, leading policy efforts, leading organizing efforts, leading community building efforts. And so it's important that we begin to have these conversations so that we could build relationships with one another, as well as identify what is happening in our communities and develop a mapping system across the state of California where people are actually thinking about things in a way that's intentional, in a way that is inclusive, in a way in which we're really going to have real systems change.